I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie, and one thing I've learned is that you buy a house, but you make it a home. Because with every fix, update, and renovation, it becomes a little more your own. So you need all your jobs done well. For nearly 30 years, Angie has helped millions of homeowners hire skilled pros for the projects that matter. From plumbing to electrical, roof repair to deck upgrades. So leave it to the pros who will get your jobs done well. Hire high-quality certified pros at Angie.com.
Small business owners, we know finishing your to-do list can feel like climbing a mountain, but that mountain is also covered in banana peels. Then when something new gets added to your list, you're like, nope, I'm already climbing this huge super slippery banana peel mountain of a to-do list. At Progressive, we don't want to make your day any harder. That's why we make it easy to manage your policy on our mobile app, so climbing that banana peel mountain feels more like a leisurely stroll. See if you can save on commercial auto insurance in as little as 7 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Coverage subject to policy terms and conditions.
The Management Minute is a service of the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. A few years back, I had the privilege of being invited to High Table at one of the colleges at Oxford University in England. High Table is like the banquet you see in the movies, minus the ghosts floating overhead. Yes, this professor from Utah State University got to march into a hall as robed students stood in respect, then sat at a high table in front of distinguished scholars. It's not hard to be in awe. As we sat, the robed headmaster said, "It doesn't matter who you sit next to, everyone at this table is interesting." Everyone was interesting, but not more so than my brilliant colleagues at the Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. Universities are places of light and knowledge that change us. If you're ready for that change, try an MBA at Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Mark Christiansen.
Got a good midday traffic pattern in place. I-15 right through the Salt Lake Valley. Both north and southbound on I-15 looks great. The 215s are in working condition, even at the south end there from that earlier fire. Bangerter looks good as well. If you're trying to make your way from downtown Salt Lake, say maybe to Kaysville or Layton, there's nothing in your way. And beyond that, the construction zone through Riverdale Road isn't really hindering things as well. Just a little slow spot if you're using Highway 40 to go westbound 80, that flyover backed up to Silver Summit on-ramp in the greater Park City area there. I'm Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Much cooler today, a high of only 78. Sunny skies later this week with highs getting back to the 80s. 73 and sunny right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As global tensions escalate, the United States finds itself navigating a complex web of allies, alliances, adversaries. With some authoritarian powers forming increasingly cohesive blocs, the stakes for maintaining a free world order had never been higher. So the question then, is it time for America to put a stake in the ground in terms of who is friend, who is foe, and what's the path forward for freedom? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
As we have been covering, of course, over the weekend, a lot happening in the Middle East and many things to unpack and a lot of things to just try to sort out just a little bit as it relates to what is happening in the Middle East. Of course, over the weekend, beginning on Friday, Israel carried out a series of attacks inside of Lebanon against Hezbollah. Taking out their senior leader, Nasrallah, and many other of their senior leaders, both in terms of the operation, but also in terms of their military forces, their Radwan, which is their elite force. Most of those senior leaders were taken out in attacks over the weekend as well. And so as things continue to escalate there, we've been asking the question in terms of where does the United States stand? What messages are we sending to our friends and also to our foes? And what does that look like? And is it a time for more clarity? One of the things that I have been critical of the Biden administration on when it comes to foreign affairs is their inability to articulate who's the friend and who's the foe, who are our allies, who are our critical alliances, and who are the enemies. And while we always have to engage in the conversation and always be willing to get to the table, especially as it relates to getting to peace, we also have to be very clear in terms of what matters most and where we're willing to stand. The Biden administration has really had a policy in many areas of the world, not just the Middle East, that is a ratchet down theory, that everything they have done is to de-escalate and almost de-escalate at any cost in some areas of the world. And that's created some confusion amongst our allies, and it's emboldened some of our enemies. And I think that's one of the things that we have to think again about in terms of the messages that we're sending. If the message is always de-escalate at any cost, ratchet down at any cost, does that cause many of our allies to question if the United States is really an ally or not? And we know there have been questions about that, clearly in Europe, as it relates to Ukraine and dealing with Vladimir Putin. We know that in Asia, there's many questions if the United States will really stand with Taiwan. Should China move forward with aggression there and reunification efforts in China? And so there's a lot of folks that have a lot of questions and are wondering, where do we really stand? And we have to think about that. On the one hand, we want to make sure we're not just engaging in never-ending wars. Clearly, for the forever wars have not led us anywhere that is good. But if our leaders are really reluctant to call an enemy or a friend, or those who are fighting for peace, or those who are working towards peace for their own people and for the people in the region or the neighborhood that they live in, we've got to get some clarity there. Because the uncertainty ensures one thing. The uncertainty ensures that it will escalate, not de-escalate. Because as long as there are people who are vacillating back and forth, hesitating back and forth, the less resolve, the less determination there is in terms of standing for peace and standing for freedom and standing with our friends. And so one of the questions we have to think again about, and this was done really nicely by Elliot Ackerman in a piece in The Atlantic, saying that, look, if we want to remain at peace, or at least find ourselves so that we're no longer in an active war, we have to speak very clearly in defense of our friends. And whether that's Israel, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's Taiwan, all of those places and spaces, we have to wonder, where do we actually stand? And when push comes to shove, will we immediately retreat into a defensive crouch? Will we function from a position of weakness as a nation? Or will we function from a position of strength? Now, it's very clear to me that in the Middle East, you clearly have Iran moving forward because they have sensed the hesitation, the vacillation when it comes to American foreign policy and who the United States will stand with or how they will stand with an ally like Israel. And because of that, we have seen these proxy wars and these proxy groups, whether it's Hamas in Gaza, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen, whether it's Hezbollah in Lebanon. And they have become increasingly active in striking out not only against Israel directly, but against the United States as well. And so all of those things really result in a series of questions that have to be answered at some point. I thought it was interesting today that Secretary of State Blinken talked about getting to peace. We got to get to a ceasefire and a peace. And one of the things that we know when it comes to those kinds of peace negotiations, a lot of these leaders, especially these leaders of the more authoritarian places, like Russia, like Iran, they're only going to come to the table when they feel like their plan has no path. And then they want to come and work out a deal of some sort or another. But as long as they feel like there is a chance, even if it's a snowball's chance, if they've got a chance, they're going to keep at it. And so right now in the Middle East, you have a very interesting moment. Israel has carried out a series of strikes that have really crippled Hezbollah, both in terms of their weapons. They've been going after armaments and storage facilities, but they've also taken out significant senior leaders. And so there's a little bit of disarray there. And so will that be a moment where Hezbollah decides to take a step back? Will Iran take a step back in terms of attacks against Israel? And if so, then is there an opportunity for the U.S. to lead towards peace and negotiations? Or will they say this is just a temporary setback and there's still a chance? There's still a chance that we can accomplish our objectives. Because if they believe they have a path to hurting Israel or to destabilizing Israel or to taking back some of that territory or whatever it may be, then they're going to keep at it. And so then the question becomes, where does the U.S. stand in all of that? And then what's the conversation? How do you get to the table? Getting to the table is the big question. And the path to the question is clarity. Because as I said before, if people don't know where you stand, if there is hesitancy, if there's vacillation back and forth, then all you're dealing with is the politics of it all. And sadly, that's what we've been seeing in the United States. Because there have been uncertainty in terms of our policy and who we're going to really stand with and how we're going to prove that we're standing with them, then everything gets lost in the politics. Left and right, people running for office, people who are looking for a wedge issue, people who are trying to raise some campaign cash, someone who's looking for a really nice zinger of a talking point in a debate. They'll use all of these situations, sadly, for political points because there's no clarity in terms of a path to policy. And there are a lot of thugs and bad guys in the world. There's authoritarian nations out there who would like nothing more than for the U.S. to continue to be on the sideline. You know, we had a conversation last week with our good friend Amos Giora, who has done incredible work around bystanders and enablers. And I believe that's still a question for all of us. We're going to explore that as we go through the week this week. Will the U.S. be a bystander in some of these challenges to freedom and peace, religious liberty, the existence of nations, sovereign nations and territory? Will we be an enabler? Will our inaction or our lack of clarity in terms of what we believe and who we declare to be our friends and allies, will there be so much uncertainty that the authoritarians and those with ill intent will see weakness and exploit that as an opportunity to boldly advance their cause? To me, it's a question of clarity. So we have to think again about what we think we know when it comes to what we easily declare. They're our friends. They're our allies. These are our foes. But are they, and how do we show it? Words ring a little hollow if we aren't willing to back it up and prove to our allies and prove to our enemies where we actually stand. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Tomorrow, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance square off in the VP debate.
We need common sense tax and economic policy.
It's not even about policies. It's about sharing our values.
We have special coverage of the vice presidential debate all day today and tomorrow. Your Voice, Your Vote 2024. This week on KSL News Radio.
I'm Utah Tax Attorney Jordan Wilcox. Listen to what actual clients have had to say about working with us.
Hi, I'm Gary. I'm a building contractor. About a year prior to the market crashing, we had a big job that was unable to pay a bill of about 6 figures. We were still left with a very difficult situation with the IRS. Eventually, at the end of the day, I realized that the penalties and interest were growing faster than my ability to save to deal with it. I had talked to people and I felt that Jordan Wilcox represented best what I thought could help me, primarily because they were local. And I needed a bigger solution than I was coming up with. It takes too long to figure it out on your own.
Hi, I'm Jordan Wilcox. You need a tax attorney that's not afraid to fight for you. Visit taxhelput.com to schedule your free consultation.
I would recommend Jordan Wilcox. It feels very good to not have the IRS on your back.
That's taxhelput.com.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Did you know that your largest investment asset might not be your retirement account or home? I'm Jay Jackson, CEO of Abacus Life. Most people don't realize that their life insurance policy is actually an asset they can sell. But for almost 20 years, Abacus has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors just like you. We've even created a free policy value calculator at abacuspays.com so you can find out in seconds what we might pay for your policy. There are no fees and no obligations, just information. Knowing the value of your life insurance policy is as important as knowing the value of your home, your equity portfolio, or your finances in total. Discover the valuable information you need to understand the current market value for your life insurance, and then get real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus. Visit abacuspays.com to learn more and use our free policy value calculator today.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, art going back to the earliest days of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is on display at the Church History Museum downtown. Second, a fire that had been contained in Southern California flared up again, thanks in part to hot weather. And third, a space rock has become a new mini-moon, circulating in orbit around the Earth for a few weeks. 73 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. Well, in the wake of Senator Mitch McConnell's change in leadership, his not running for re-election, not going to be the leader of the Republican Party, there are a lot of things for Republicans to do in the United States Senate. Obviously, they're trying to win the majority in the Senate, and then, of course, that sets off a whole other set of things in terms of the potential successor to Mitch McConnell in terms of the Senate leadership. But more important than who's leading, it's what they are leading toward that we believe is the most important part of that conversation. Someone who's been tracking all of this had a great piece in The Hill today. Brian Darling, president and founder of Liberty Government Affairs, also former counsel to Senator Rand Paul, and someone I interacted with when I was back in our nation's capital. And Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to hear your voice.
Great piece in The Hill, and you and I are on the same page when it comes to the institution of the Senate being broken. And so whether it's someone like a John Cornyn, whether it's a Steve Daines, whether it's a John Thune, all of those, whoever it is, there are some things that just need to be fixed. We've spent a lot of time last week talking about the filibuster and all of that, but I want to jump to a couple of the things that you pointed out in your piece that are a little under the headlines that I want our listeners to really get into. And one of those is just some of the bad practices that the Senate has fallen into that prevent good debate, that prevent a good amendment process. What are the things that we should be thinking about, regardless of who the leader of the Senate might be?
Well, there are a couple of things. Obviously, the filibuster being one, allowing senators to take to the floor and engage in extended debate. But also something that's most Americans haven't heard about is something called filling the amendment tree, basically where the Senate leader uses his position as leader of the Senate to get recognized and to basically just lay down a bunch of amendments, empty amendments, just to prevent rank and file members from participating in the process. And what does this do? It basically just marginalizes all other senators. So they can't really participate in the process. I mean, the Senate has been known through its history as a deliberative body where all members have a say. You know, the Senate is supposed to represent the will of the states. It's supposed to be very different than the House, but it's morphed in becoming much more like the House day by day. So, you know, one of the issues I talked about was the process of blocking out amendments and to marginalize members, not allowing members to participate unless if you're in leadership. And a couple other things. I mean, I'm concerned about the fact that you have omnibus bills, giant bills that have multi-subjects in them, where members don't get to vote individually on issues. It's basically a take it or leave it situation.
Yeah, and so let's unpack those just a little bit. I want to stick with this idea on the amendment process to just help our listeners understand that. So often you get a bill laid down there, and then you think, oh, I want to add an amendment, or I want to add this amendment to change it. And the leaders, and it's usually the leaders of both parties, get together and decide what's going to be in there. And then it is called this idea of filling the tree. So then everyone gets blocked out except for one or two senators from each side who happen to be in the room where the decision gets made.
That's exactly right. I mean, usually it's a member of leadership. And so it's not a partisan issue at all. I mean, you can have Democrats being in charge and they're marginalizing their own members if they don't like amendments that some other Democrats might want to offer. So it's a process being used by leadership to basically control the Senate. And it just basically takes power away from your average senator and puts it all in the leadership and, you know, the leadership of both parties, because they're usually going to get together in a closed door and come to an agreement. But if you combine getting rid of the filibuster or even chipping away at it with this process of filling the amendment tree and blocking out amendments, you're basically just saying that there are only two members that matter. It's a majority leader and the minority leader, and everybody else is kind of along for the ride.
Yeah, that is so important for all of us to think about and to really understand. And that really leads to this other point that you mentioned, again, in your piece at the Hill, is this omnibus or these bills that have so many different subjects to it. That often become part of the same problem. We talk about the collusion that takes place to fill that amendment tree. It's not a conflict problem. It's a collusion problem. And then you have the omnibus and these bills that have so many different subjects that are unrelated. What's the process we've got to get through so that we can, one, get rid of the omnibus process, because that always leads to more spending and usually bad spending, along with just these multiple topic bills that also end up with more spending and bad legislation?
Yeah, I mean, it's an institutional problem, but it's also a leadership problem. I mean, basically, you're going to have members running to be in leadership. You know, if Republicans take over, you're going to have John Thune, senator from South Dakota, or John Cornyn, senator from Texas, maybe Steve Daines from Montana, all saying, I want to be leader. And they should promise to make these reforms, because you can change the rules all you want, and it matters who's in leadership, whether those reforms are actually going to happen. So first, you need leadership from the top. And secondarily, there are probably a number of reforms you can put in place. I mean, I'd love to see the filibuster restored to its original intent, with basically you can filibuster nominations too, because that gives you leverage over them trying to fill the amendment tree. I'd love to see a rule basically forbidding any leader from filling the amendment tree, basically allowing members to actually offer amendments and one subject bills. Wouldn't it be great if there was a point of order, basically giving one senator the power to stand up and say, I object to this bill because it's got 5 different subjects in it. those would all be wonderful reforms. But ultimately, it is going to come down to who is the leader and if they promise to do these things.
Yeah, I'm so glad you have pointed us to this idea of leadership. We talk about it in the context of so many things. If an institution says it's a funding problem, it's not a funding problem, it's a leadership problem. If people are saying we can't accomplish this, it's a leadership problem. When we talk about reforming Congress and the Senate in particular, all the rules, all the other things are a little bit of window dressing because it is a leadership issue in the end, and we have to have people, again, on both sides of the aisle who are committed, as you said, Brian, so powerfully, they have to be committed to the institution and what the institution was designed to be.
Yeah, and you do have some members standing up for it. You had Joe Manchin saying that he was upset with Vice President Harris because she said she's for getting rid of the filibuster and he's not going to support her. So when members stand up and say, hey, I'm not for this, and even if they're, somebody who's a backbench or not in leadership, that's helpful. And you've got members of both parties right now that are opposed to getting rid of the filibuster. They'd love to see more amendments. They'd love to get rid of the multi-subject bills. They're there, and hopefully one of those individuals will rise up and become the leader.
Great perspective, Brian Darling, president and founder of Liberty Government Affairs, former counsel for Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. And Brian, great to catch up with you today. Great piece in The Hill. Everybody, you can check that out at thehill.com. And Brian, we look forward to having you back because we're going to stay with this conversation when it comes to the Senate and restoring it to be the great deliberative body that it's supposed to be. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Again, that's Brian Darling, president and founder of Liberty Government Affairs, and someone that I had the opportunity to work with when I was in Washington, D.C., a great thinker and someone who loves the institution of the Senate. And you don't have to be a policy wonk. You don't have to be someone who just pours through pages of old congressional records and things that have happened in the Senate to really think through some of the things that he lays out in this piece. And I encourage you to go check this out at thehill.com. Talking about making sure that whoever leads the Senate, both sides of the political aisle, to make sure that they are making commitments to the things that will restore the Senate to a great deliberative body, not a great political body. That's not what it's supposed to be. But making sure we do things like we preserve the filibuster. It's so important to make it a deliberative process there, to make sure that it's not just status quo, but that we're actually engaging in the right kinds of debate and dialogue and compromise and all of those things that make the Senate a great deliberative body. They've lost that. Brian pointed out in his piece going back to 2013 when then Democratic Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid raised a point of order to abolish the filibuster on nominees, with the exception of the Supreme Court. And that was kind of the nuclear option, chipped away at the filibuster. And it undermines that ability of the Senate to really deliberate. And then, of course, this whole amendment process. The senators should be able to offer amendments on all those bills. And having just the leaders of the party do this process we call filling out the tree, where they just fill it up so nobody can offer amendment. And so everything is baked and done. And then the leaders give an all or nothing choice of it's this or nothing. No one gets to improve or amend any particular piece of legislation. So all of those are things that we've got to think about as we move into a new Senate, regardless of who's in charge and who's in control. It will be, as Brian said, a matter of leadership. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomis. KSL's top local story this hour. 2 climbers had to be rescued in American Fork Canyon after a rope malfunction. KSL News Radio's Michael Commit reports.
The gear problem happened as the duo were rappelling down a highly technical slope. Fortunately for them, they had enough service to call 911. The difficult climb meant search and rescue volunteers needed to spend more than 3 hours to get them down, but fortunately, nobody was hurt by the end of it.
The Utah County Sheriff's Office says those climbers were grateful and promise to be a little more careful next time they go out. For the first time since 2019, there will be no seating restrictions for sessions of General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The COVID-19 pandemic and construction has limited seats in recent years, but the renovated church office building plaza, the Main Street Plaza, reopened earlier this year. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Former President Donald Trump visiting Valdosta, Georgia this afternoon, one of many areas devastated by Helene.
Throughout the region, our hearts are with you, and we are going to be with you as long as you need.
Trump says he'd brought trucks filled with relief supplies and gas. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day right now, 147 points. The NASDAQ was down 42. And our KSL weather looks like sunny skies, and it'll be a little bit warmer through the rest of the week. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Want to keep your gas-powered engines running like new? Stable's proprietary formulas are proven by third-party testing to outperform the competition in keeping fuel fresh, preventing corrosion, and cleaning the entire fuel system. With Stable, you can have confidence you are doing the right thing for your engine's long-term health. Just pour into your gas can or fuel tank, then top off with fresh fuel. At every fill-up or when you store, start with Stable. Available where fuel additives are sold.
What's wrong?
My travel rewards card didn't earn enough miles for my vacation.
Are you crying? Are you crying because of that other credit card?
Uh-huh.
Well, switch to the Capital One Venture card. Venture lets you redeem miles on any travel purchase.
Really?
Yep, and you earn unlimited double miles on every purchase every single day. The Capital One Venture card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
If you need a new roof, there's a reason IWC Roofing is the #1 residential roofing contractor in Utah. IWC has been replacing roofs for 27 years. They are professionals. You don't get some janky subcontractor fiddling around up there. You get experienced IWC employees on your roof, and they finish most jobs in a single day. They're in, they're out, and they power wash your driveway just to say thank you. Now you're wondering about the price. After all, IWC is one of the few Owens Corning Platinum certified contractors in the entire state, but they offer value pricing, and right now, take advantage of their fall special. $2,000 off your quote. And of course, they'll work with you on financing, so call IWC Roofing, the highest rated roofing contractor in Utah, plus $2,000 off. Right now, call IWC Roofing, 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690, or go to IWCRoofingUtah.com.
As the beautiful golds, reds, and bright yellows appear on the trees, the air turns crisp and the fall takes hold. Your fun changes from shorts and flip-flops to hiking boots and flannel shirts, along with the endless trails to hike or ATV. When you visit Bear Lake, you visit so much more than the ordinary. From a wildlife refuge to scenic trails to the shores of the beautiful Caribbean Blue Lake, everything takes on a whole new look. See it for yourself this fall, or plan your trip for the first winter snow, snowshoeing, snowmobiling, logs on a fire, as you warm your toes and sip warm cider in one of Bear Lake's cozy cabin getaways. To find out more about everything that's available to you and to book your stay, visit bearlake.org. Bear Lake, a little piece of paradise, just right outside your back door. See it for yourself. Visit scenicidaho.org.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Mark Christiansen.
Well, here in the Salt Lake Valley, traffic's moving well on I-15. No problems east or westbound on the 201 at the moment here as far as delays. 215 east and west side also in good shape, as well as Bangor in Utah County. Very good traffic flow from the point of the mountain if you're making your way towards the Orem-Provo area, Davis County, that is, from downtown Salt Lake all the way up and through Kaysville into the greater Ogden area. Looks like that traffic just kind of building again. Highway 40 to westbound 80, the flyover in Park City. It's backed up again to Silver Summit. It backs up, then it lets up, and then it backs up, and then it lets up. So that's kind of where we're at right now with that one. Advanced Window Products, $2,500 off 10 windows or more. AdvancedWindows.com. Affordable windows guaranteed. Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Much cooler today, high of 78, and sunny skies later this week, highs in the 80s. Right now, 75 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomis from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The Biden administration is grappling with ongoing supply chain challenges, and the process is showing both progress and some pretty persistent hurdles. While initial efforts to centralize oversight showed promise, business leaders now express concerns about a lack of clarity in navigating supply chain disruptions. With a potential dock workers strike looming today, the effectiveness of the administration's supply chain initiatives is once again under some pretty heavy scrutiny. What is the government's role in managing supply chains, and what are the long-term implications for American businesses and for all of us as consumers if we can't solve the challenge? Ari Hawkins, of course, is a reporter at Politico. He is the author of The Morning Trade, Politico's pro-daily trade policy newsletter. And Ari, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So let's dive into this. Kind of the de-scrambling of the supply lines was the focus of your piece in Politico, and kind of break that down for our listeners in terms of, we all remember the supply chain things that became so apparent and evident during the course of the pandemic. Where are we today? What's improved? What hasn't? And what is the Biden administration getting right? And what are they struggling with?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, COVID-19 really was sort of the catalyst for this kind of widespread rethink of the supply chain to try to reorganize all of the supply lines to effectively anticipate a lot of these critical shortages before they happen. And the sense that we've gotten from interviews and from manufacturers of major industry groups is that there was a pretty cohesive push to get people to speak to the right individual in the Biden administration, to talk to the right sort of sector of the government, if that was, for instance, ushering in a permit more quickly, if that was a critical juncture that made it so that critical goods got where they needed to go. The feeling from a lot of industry is that now that there isn't that same type of pressure that was so magnified during the COVID-19 era, that sort of focus has kind of shifted. Now it's a lot up to the individual entities, up to industry to sort of figure it out by themselves, and that's left them without any kind of unifying point person or objective that would really help them in the case of another type of widespread breakdown. Effectively, when things are totally sort of chaotic, in the weeds, and messy, the Biden administration and government entities that are a part of it are able to sort of come together and fix that. However, because this looming strike is so unexpected, there's going to be this fear of a little bit of noise and complications where it'll be difficult for people to find the right thing from the Biden administration, whether that's the right point person, whether that's logistics, to really get things moving again.
Yeah, and this is so crucial. I want to dig into a couple of these things even a little deeper. We've been talking a lot about leadership, and whether it's in foreign policy, whether it's within a business, usually when there's a problem, it's usually a leadership problem. And one of the things that you pointed out so powerfully in your piece, Ari, is you talked about the fact that you have all of these different initiatives going on, and they emerge across all the different federal agencies, all the different departments, and then there's no leader. There's no one who can plant the flag or who is going to be the one to say, here's where we're going, here's what we need to solve. And to me, it's one more of those examples of focus always precedes success. And when it comes to the supply chain, it seems that we have a lot more confusion than clarity, at least that the business leaders are feeling in terms of how do we deal with this and how do we get to a focused person who we can say, we need to talk to them if we're going to get something fixed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There have been dozens of initiatives that have tried to sort of crack down on exactly that issue. Most of them have been focused around this partnership between industry and the administration. But the feeling is that after those conversations, there's not really much that has been done beyond that. So there might be a better relationship now between major members of industry and the administration. However, translating that into some type of actual risk assessment ability or an ability to really predict what these shortages are and what is needed to be done to prevent those, which was the administration's initial goal really during that COVID era, that is a lot harder to materialize. And to the Biden administration's defense, it's a difficult process to try to find this sort of, magic thing that will really cut across all of these entities and mitigate all of this. However, that was what was identified as sort of the critical piece to try to fix during the COVID era. And frankly, if that same pandemic or something like it, like a port strike that could escalate into some kind of national emergency, were to happen again, there's really no guarantee that the administration would be any better able to provide these members of critical industries with the resources that they need to make sure that goods get in the right places and that the administration and industry alongside it are really able to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and you pointed this out in a great way in your piece, just talking about how when we have a crisis, we get really focused really fast. When there's not a crisis, we tend to let things kind of undulate along. And I think it's true that these things did not appear just within the Biden administration. These are decades in the making, some of these problems, I think, inside of all of that. And so then the question becomes, how do we navigate it absent a crisis, absent a real emergency? Because you also pointed out in your piece something that I think is so important, and that is we keep losing these windows of opportunity to do reform. And to me, it's always the test of what do you do when you don't have to do something ultimately determines your success. And are we continuing to miss opportunities when that urgency isn't there and things that might prevent some of the problems we saw during the pandemic?
Yeah, and there were a number of sort of windows of opportunity first during COVID. There was another one kind of identified during sort of the peak of Houthis interactions with commercial shipping vessels. And now that there was a moment of calm, because that calm sort of preceded this looming strike, there weren't necessarily the right people in the room to try to get at all of that. And additionally, some of the initiatives that were launched during sort of the peak of these crises, for example, there was a 2021 executive order which included an 100-day review to develop this strategy, hasn't necessarily materialized outside of this sort of data that can be helpful in certain capacities, but doesn't necessarily translate to some type of overarching policy change that really was pitched from the Biden administration to try to negate all of those critical vulnerabilities.
Yeah, such an important thing. And as you said, you got to get the right people in the right room to make all of that happen. And we'll be watching very closely, obviously, as we look at this potential strike that could disrupt a lot of those things. And again, so many opportunities to fix some components that are broken. But again, it will all come down, as always, to that issue of leadership, regardless of who's in control of the White House or chambers of Congress. I think all of that is going to come down to a real focusing tool in terms of somebody leading out. Great piece. Ari Hawkins, reporter at Politico. As a reminder, he's the author of Morning Trade, which is Politico Pro's daily trade policy newsletter. And this is one of those, you don't think it matters to you until it matters to you. And when baby formula is not on the shelf, or when you can't get the things that you need for your Christmas shopping list, then it becomes real serious, real important, real fast. And that's why we have people like Ari on this show to help us navigate what's happening, what comes next, and how it impacts all of us. Ari, as always, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and that's Ari Hawkins from Politico. And it is one of those, everything's great until it's not. And when it's not, when it comes to supply chain, we're all going to feel it. And I think there were some missed opportunities from the administration. They still have some chances to get it right and change the dynamic. The question is, will they lead? We'll be right back.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
This is the day of the big sale at your gift shop.
Welcome in.
So this isn't just a big day for your business. It's a big day for the network keeping it all connected. That is, if it can handle the pressure.
Next in line, please.
So is it possible to get business internet you can really count on? It is. With 99.9% network reliability from Comcast Business. It's like this neat little bow.
Do you like that gift wrap?
Really ties it all together. Reliable internet for your business. It's not just possible. It's happening. Comcast Business. Powering possibilities.
Switch to Comcast Business and get started with reliable internet and advanced security for $49.99 a month for 12 months with a 2-year agreement. Plus, ask how to get up to a $500 prepaid card with a qualifying internet package. Don't wait. Call or go online to switch today. Offer ends 10/13/24. Restrictions apply. New customers only with 150 megabit per second internet. Eco bill and auto pay required. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. After 12 months, regular rates apply.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the big differences, I think, between reading a story online and hearing it from us, Tim, is that, you and I are allowed to share a reaction. We need to be able to say, what in the world were they thinking? So that people listening will know. We feel it too. When we read a story that sounds ridiculous, we're right with you. It sounds ridiculous.
Well, we get caught up, I'm sure just like our listeners do sometimes, in death scrolling on social media. And fact-checking it on your own is tough. The great thing about tuning in every morning and starting your morning with us on KSL is you can count on the fact that when that information comes out of the radio in your direction, it comes from reliable sources.
It's already been fact-checked.
Right. And that's not always easy when you're getting it online. Finding who wrote it, when was it written, has it been updated with the current facts of the day that change sometimes minute to minute, not just day to day.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio. With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a couple of climbers had to be rescued in American Fork Canyon because their gear malfunctioned. Second, the conference center at Temple Square will be filled to capacity for General Conference this weekend. First time that's happened since 2019. And third, one of the nation's top supermarket chains says its sales are up, even as restaurant chains say fewer people are eating out. 75 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, as the 2024 presidential race enters the final stretch, all eyes are going to turn to the highly anticipated vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. That will be tomorrow. It's a crucial event, and while in history, most of the VP debates have not been all that significant, but this time might be a little different in terms of the significance, offering a last chance for both campaigns. This way, undecided voters reshape public perception And obviously, they're going to have some very different strategies, different goals for the debate. It promises to be an interesting one in this election cycle to see how this all plays out. So we want to get under the hood a little bit beyond the headlines of what the candidates are doing to prepare for tomorrow and how this debate might impact the high-stakes presidential election showdown on the first Tuesday of November. And really pleased to have back on the program Max Burns, veteran Democratic strategist, founder of Third Degree Strategies, and a great piece in The Hill. Getting under the hood a little bit in terms of the Vance versus Walz debate tomorrow. And Max, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
All right, let's get into this. As you rightly pointed out in your piece at The Hill, it is the undercard event, but a little overcard, a little bit more than normal in terms of the stakes on this one, as both of these VP candidates are a little less known, also have some things to prove out as they have this first big test. What are you watching for, and what do you anticipate rolling into tomorrow's debate?
So the key thing to note with these debates is that both J.D. Vance and Tim Walz are pretty good debaters. They both understand politics on a fundamental level. They both, when they want to, are quite articulate in hewing to the center and making a very broad case. What I'm curious to see is which J.D. Vance specifically shows up on Tuesday, because if it's this one that has become sort of a proxy for Donald Trump, that's a candidate who keeps getting his boss in trouble, keeps giving new political problems for the Republican Party to have to unknot. But if it's the one who ran for Senate and in many ways was viewed as sort of a refreshing return to techno-conservatism, then that's going to present a much less extreme face for Trumpism for the public.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting thing to look at, looking back at some of J.D. Vance's debates when he was running for Senate. Where people say, wow, that's pretty smart. That's interesting. I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's a very educated, very compelling conversation and argument to be made. And so it will be interesting to see which J.D. Vance shows up for that. As you look at Governor Walz, as you mentioned, he's also a great debater. He understands the power of the one-liner and the common touch. What do you expect to see out of him, and what would be kind of the high bar for him to clear if it were a winning night tomorrow?
Yeah, we have Tim Walz to thank for this very viral moment in the Democratic messaging machine where he called Republicans weird, and that essentially derailed Donald Trump's campaign for almost a month. What we want to see from Walz is really more of what Kamala Harris delivered in that debate that she just had, which was that some of her highest ranked moments among people watching were when she laid out plans, and specifically when she said, Donald Trump doesn't have a plan for you. So all of the data seems to indicate that voters are really hungry for someone who actually has ideas for how they want to spend their presidency. So you'll probably see Tim Walz avoiding a lot of the small barbs and a lot of the attacks on J.D. Vance to really focus on explaining out Kamala Harris's plans for this term and how that will help middle class and working class Americans. And that's something we've seen him doing in recent weeks on the campaign trail. I think you'll probably see a polished, much more focused version of that on Tuesday.
Yeah, and it seems to me that component that you laid out in terms of Vice President Harris saying, hey, I've got a plan for you. Former President Trump has a plan for him. And so kind of rounding that out, filling in, putting some meat on the bones there, I think would be the right space for Tim Walz to get into, and avoiding, as you said, the small ball stuff, the kind of the sidebar skirmish stuff that might be entertaining. It might be good for the partisans in the base of the camps, but really won't do anything for that movable middle that ultimately is getting smaller, but will decide the election in the end.
Yeah, there is this declining segment of people who are undecided, and that's smartly who Kamala Harris was targeting in her debate, whereas Donald Trump went straight for the base with the comments about Springfield and Haitians eating people's pets. He didn't do much to expand the field, and I think even his campaign has acknowledged that. What you'll see from J.D. Vance is trying to win those people back by potentially portraying himself as a stabilizing force on Donald Trump. The only problem is Mike Pence tried that same argument in 2020, and voters were not persuaded by what they'd seen. So it's a question of how many voters still believe that someone like J.D. Vance could have any kind of moderating impact on Donald Trump at all.
Yeah. And then final question for you as we round things out. Again, historically, not a lot of big moments in vice presidential debate history. Even the Lloyd Benson comment to Dan Quayle of you're no Jack Kennedy didn't move the needle in terms of the ultimate outcome of that. You had Sarah Palin in a horrific performance that, I don't know if it contributed. I think Barack Obama was going to win that one anyway and become president. Anything else that you're keeping your eye on that might be a little under the headlines that could be an interesting moment or a revealing moment in the debate tomorrow?
Well, you're definitely right that most people who tune into debates have already made up their mind. So it's not a lot of persuasion. But what's going to be interesting is which of the moments each side chooses to turn into fundraising appeals on social media. What are the clips you're seeing both parties run with? Because what we saw from the first debate was that after Donald Trump started to stumble, those videos stopped coming out from the GOP. So we knew something was going on. If you see that kind of silence from either side, it's pretty much an indication that maybe the candidates have missed their mark on what they were supposed to go out there and say.
Yeah, this is why we have Max on the program, folks. So this is an important component. We always talk about hitting the target, and everybody say, the target is the debate tomorrow. Max just framed it perfectly. It's not what happens for the partisans who are watching, it's what gets into that punch-through strategy. What becomes the op-ed the following day? What goes into that social media campaign? What becomes the next big banner at a big rally? What do they hope people are talking about, not just the night of the debate, but a week after the debate? That really matters. Max Burns, a veteran Democratic strategist, founder of Third Degree Strategies. Great piece in thehill.com and always fantastic insight. And we look forward to having you back as we continue our march towards the first. I know it's technically the first Tuesday after the first Monday. This year it's the first Tuesday of November. We'll go with that. And Max, thanks so much for joining us today.
Anytime. Thanks.
All right. That's Max Burns, Democratic strategist, founder of Third Degree Strategies. And I just want to double down on what Max said there at the end. He said that the real test of who's successful and who isn't at tomorrow night's debate will not be what you see on the stage and not be what all the partisans react to tomorrow night. The question will be how many of the moments during the debate get turned into clips for social media, clips on all the news networks, clips that become part of or quotes that become part of fundraising emails and solicitations, things that become banners at the next big political rally. That will be the test. So often in politics and in so many other areas of life, we get so focused on the target. You can hit a lot of targets and be absolutely ineffective. I would always tell politicians the speech that you're about to deliver that you think is the target is not the target. The target is what happens tomorrow. What do you want the headline to be the following day? What momentum do you want to turn this into a week from now or 2 weeks from now? And Max hit it right on the money. It's not about what we see and what the partisans decide matters in the debate. It's what gets played and what becomes part of the punch-through strategy. It's always about the punch-through. Not targets, punch through, because punch through gets you from a really nice moment to some real momentum that ultimately could lead you to victory. That wraps it up for hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We're going to step aside for some top of the hour news. Don't go anywhere. We have a big treat for you in hour number two. Rabbi Meir Soloveichik is going to join us for an in-depth conversation on the founding of the nation, the principles that unite us, and what comes next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Campers in Wasatch County being asked to leave the Soapstone Basin because of a wildfire that's broken out in that area. Here's KSL News Radio's Michael Commit.
The Yellow Lake fire ignited and grew to a 1,500-acre burn just over the weekend. Utah Fire Info says Highway 35 was closed, and resources like helicopter crews and even air tankers have been used to combat the blaze.
And Utah Fire Info asking people not to report this because they know all about it. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Fewer people are eating out, and many people say it's because of inflation. KSL News Radio's Virl Johansson has more.
Restaurants like McDonald's and Olive Garden report sales dropped in the second quarter. McDonald's dropped by just over 1%, while Olive Garden fell by nearly 3%. McDonald's CEO Christopher Kemczynski told analysts at the Associated Press consumers are being more selective when deciding to eat out or not.
The sales in grocery stores have gone up in the same time period. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day now, 16 points. Where they had been down. NASDAQ is up right now, 69. And our KSL weather, sunshine, and certainly not as hot as last week. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandswimspasale.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Mark Christiansen.
Well, I've got a couple of problems this hour. One of those is Pony Express and Redwood Road. Looks like a dump truck and a car got in a collision there, and it's affecting north and southbound travels and westbound on Pony Express from Redwood Road. Looks like it's pretty well blocked off at the moment here. Another accident northbound on-ramp to 215 on the east side belt route if you're headed towards the I-80 interchange there. Another one about 4100 South Redwood Road. I-15 looks great through all three counties. Experience fall in Cedar City. Color featuring 4 scenic highways, Red Rock views in Cedar Breaks and Dixie National Forest, Shakespeare Festival, seasonal farmers markets, pumpkin patches, and more. Plan at visitcedarcity.com. Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Much cooler today with a high of only 78. Then sunny skies later this week, highs climbing back into the 90s. And right now, we're at 75 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we always begin the show, we want to think again about what we think we know about some of the big issues of the day. One of the troubling trends that we've seen this past year in particular is anti-Semitism. We're getting far too comfortable. It's becoming all too common in American life and in way too many of our institutions. Today I had an incredible conversation with Rabbi Meir Soloveichik, and over the next 30 minutes, we are going to unpack, explore, and learn about some of the founding principles, some of the people from our founding as a nation, and some things that we absolutely need to think again about and how they apply today. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
The story of Jewish influence on America's founding is a fascinating yet often overlooked chapter in our nation's history. Despite their small numbers, Jewish Americans played a significant role in shaping the ideals and principles upon which the United States was built. Through the lens of George Washington's interaction with the Jewish community, we can gain invaluable insights into the Founding Fathers' vision for America and the hopes of religious minorities in this new nation and how it actually applies to us today. We want to pull all of those lessons forward, and we are absolutely thrilled and honored to have joining us on the program today Rabbi Meir Soloveichik, an American Orthodox rabbi and writer. He's a renowned religious leader. Rabbi Soloveichik serves as a world thinker and educator. He's one of my favorite moral voices. He stands on that commanding heights of moral imagination and helps us to think about things different and I think about them better. And Rabbi, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Boyd. It's a joy to be speaking with you today.
So you were here in the Beehive State last week down at the Wheatley Institute and talking about this unique connection. And it has a very personal connection to you in terms of where you spend most of your time. Give us that history and connection.
Yeah, so one of my jobs is the privilege of serving as the rabbi of Congregation Shereth Israel in Manhattan, otherwise known as the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of New York. And it's the oldest Jewish congregation in New York and in all of North America. It was founded, and its origins are linked to the arrival of 23 Jews in 1654. In what was then New Amsterdam. And given that they were many, many miles away from any other Jewish community on the planet, these Jews ultimately called themselves She'erit Yisrael, She'erit Israel, which is Hebrew for the remnant of Israel, and held fast to their traditions, even as New Amsterdam became New York, and then ultimately that New York became the first capital of the nascent nation that was the United States, in which these Jews were incredibly patriotically involved, really from the revolution onward. And so to speak of the story of the Jews and the founding is to tell stories about Jews that are very much linked to my own community. And it's a deeply personal story for me.
Yeah, it is a personal story. It's a story that I think we don't talk nearly enough about, and so many of these interconnected portions with the founders, I think, are so vital to really getting to the essence of what this nation is really about, what those principles and values are. And again, even though it was a very small community there in New Amsterdam, this remnant, which I just love in and of itself. We could spend an hour just on that element of it.
Yes.
But George Washington had a unique connection to your community in that space,
Yes.
wrote a series of letters. Describe those for us.
So I think the best way to start with this story is to tell first not of the letters he wrote, but of the letters he received. And then we can, through that lens, look at the letters that he wrote to the Jews of America, which are absolutely remarkable. So the story begins, and this is the story I told when I visited Wheatley at BYU last week. The story begins with a fascinating person that was from my community by the name of Jonas Phillips. Jonas Phillips is a truly Jewish story, but it's also a truly American story. This is a German Jew who arrives in 1756 in South Carolina, makes his way to New York, and becomes one of the pillars of my community. He marries there, and he has, I'm not making this up, Lloyd, he and his wife have 21 children together.
Wow.
And remarkably, as I think I joked at the BYU, he was truly American Jewry's founding father. and remarkably for that time, I think a huge percentage of his children lived into adulthood. So you can imagine the family that he must have had. Now, he was a patriot. When the British took Manhattan, he, in advance of that, fled. Manhattan was occupied by the British for most of the Revolutionary War. So he fled to Philadelphia, helped build a separate community there, which they called Mikveh Israel, the hope of Israel. One of the earliest donors to that community was Benjamin Franklin. And he served in the Revolution and actually became very prosperous and stayed in Philadelphia after the war. And when 1787, the Constitutional Convention met in Philadelphia, Jonas Phillips wrote a letter to the president of the convention, to George Washington, whom he may have known already, because we know he knew other founders. We know that he was pretty close with Benjamin Rush, the signer of the Declaration of Independence and the most famous physician in America. And so he wrote a letter to the president of the convention. And it's an absolutely remarkable letter. And I would urge your listeners just to Google Jonas Phillips, George Washington, and they'll see this letter. And the letter was essentially a complaint. He was writing to complain because in Pennsylvania, given the oath that needed to be taken in order to serve in the state legislature, the nature of the oath effectively meant that Jews were not able to serve in the legislature. And because the oath called on Jews to affirm certain tenets that they did not believe. And so he wrote to Washington and to the convention saying, this is not the equality that I fought for in America. And he wrote, the Jews have been faithful Whigs, meaning patriots, and they have fought and bled for liberty which they could not enjoy. And what I said is, it's kind of astounding. There's a lot of, to use the technical Latin term, there's a lot of chutzpah here that's going on in this letter because, compared to my ancestors in Lithuania or Poland, Jonas Phillips has an amazing Jewish life. He's prosperous. He's not afraid of pogrom, but he's essentially saying that if I cannot simultaneously serve my society by taking part in its civic discussion while still openly highlighting my identity as a Jew, openly reflecting my faith, if I can't do both simultaneously, then I am not genuinely free and then I'm not genuinely equal. Yeah. And the amazing thing, Boyd, and I pointed this out at BYU, if you look at the top of the letter, he dates the letter first with a Jewish date. He writes 26 Elul, which means that's basically where we are now, right before Rosh Hashanah. And then he writes September such and such, 1787. So why is he's writing? There's no one Jewish in the Constitutional Convention, but he's writing the Jewish date is 26 L, or if you prefer the Gentile date, here it is.
Here's your option.
And his point is exactly. So what's he doing here? But the point is, he's saying these are both me.
Yeah.
I want to be fully American, and I want to be fully Jewish. And the truth is, Abraham, you'll recall, in Genesis, identifies himself to others as a stranger and a neighbor. I am a stranger and a neighbor among you. And citing my great uncle, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, a great Talmudist and philosopher, I pointed out that that's often what it means to be a person of covenantal faith amongst others that may, have an entirely different approach to religious tenets. Yeah. You seek to be a neighbor, to be part of society, but you're also set apart by your faith. And in contrast to, say, post-revolutionary France, where they addressed that by effectively just making a secular public square, Washington's ultimate answer, though he didn't respond to this letter, Washington's ultimate answer was to help create a society where everyone was equal and everyone was also free to bring what makes them different into the larger society as well.
Yeah. Lots to unpack there in my conversation from earlier today with Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik. And we're going to stay with the question and with the conversation and this whole idea of making it both free and equal, that everyone can bring their whole authentic self into the public square, that we can not pack your faith just behind closed doors in your home or in the synagogue or in your church or mosque, but that you can bring that whole authenticity, that authentic you into the square. And then what happens when we create space for that to happen? We'll continue the conversation coming up next. Stick around.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. This weekend, it's the fall return of General Conference. KSL is pleased to broadcast live the 194th semi-annual General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Coverage starts both Saturday and Sunday at 9:30. We invite you to join us at 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and streaming live on the app for KSL News Radio.
Get up to a 30% upfront bonus to use for your retirement income, or up to 12% per year to help grow your retirement income. Whether you're in retirement or will be retiring within 10 years, Trajan Wealth can offer some of the highest guarantees in the business. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I know no one wants to work forever. We all need to retire someday, and I know you've worked hard for your money, so now is the time to guarantee it. Take advantage of up to a 30% upfront bonus for your retirement income, or up to 12% per year for retirement income. Don't woulda, shoulda, coulda. Get up to a 30% bonus just for opening an account, or up to 12% per year for retirement income. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Retire the right way, the Trajan way, with Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Annuity guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. DBA in most states says Trajan Wealth Insurance Solutions.
Trail mix, beef jerky, mixing all the soda flavors at the gas station soda machine. Snacks are better on the road. The gas is better when it's top tier. And the pit stop is better when there's a dinosaur there. Love the filler moments at a Sinclair gas station near you with DinoCare, our top tier gasoline. Some sweet and salty snacks for the commute, and a big green dino for the memories. Find a gas station near you at SinclairOil.com. Sinclair, fill up your life.
Head to Logan for funky fall fun. Jump on your brooms and join us for a fantastic fall break. Here's what's brewing. The North Logan Pumpkin Walk, October 10th through the 15th. Okay, there's no way to describe this amazing and colorful experience, but I will try. There are hundreds of carved pumpkins, plus dozens of displays crafted from painted pumpkins, gourds, and other random vegetables. You have to see it for yourself, and it's free. Celebrate Utah's Harvest Heritage October 18th and 19th at the American West Heritage Center's Fall Harvest Festival. Grain threshing, apple pressing, pony rides, train rides, antique tractors, games, and fun. Get your scream on all month long for spooky encounters on the historic downtown Logan Ghost Tour, or traipsing through a couple of giant corn mazes that may or may not be haunted. Check out live theater and music performances, great restaurants, golf, and USU football games. Head to Logan for funky fall fun. Explore Logan.com/fall.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates. This weekend only, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
This is Derek Overstreet of the New Millennium Group and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Campers in the Soapstone Basin area of Wasatch County being asked to leave as a wildfire approaches. Second, inflation means fewer people are eating out. They're spending more at the grocery store. And third, 200 years of Latter-day Saint art is on display at the Church History Museum. Right now, 75 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
We're going to stay with this question and conversation with Rabbi Soloveitchik, and we're going to go back to your the first time I heard you speak, and it was on this very point in terms of being able to take your whole authentic self into the public square. You brilliantly talked about the soul of man being that kindle for God, and being able to have the menorah on the outside of the window rather than just the inside, that you do take it into the public square. And so let's jump into that portion, because that leads us to where Washington ultimately went. But you have articulated this in such a powerful way, and I love this whole idea of a stranger and a neighbor. I think we all can think about that, and again, that covenant relationship that people have within their faith, and that we also have with one another as we come together in society.
That's exactly right. On the one hand, to belong to a particular faith community, to be part of a unique community. At the same time, the Declaration of Independence is its own covenant. Richard Niebuhr put it, a covenant is the pledging of responsibility in the presence of God. That's what the Declaration is. In support of this Declaration, with a firm reliance on divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And so America is, as it were, a covenant dedicated to an idea. Or as my late great friend, the late British Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs put it, Israel, ancient and modern, and America are the only nations that were explicitly founded in conscious pursuit of an idea. And so there is a larger covenantal aspect to the United States that can unite people of diverse beliefs. But precisely because the founders understood that they were creating a covenantal nation, they turned to the imagery of the Hebrew Bible in order to evoke this concept of covenant. So you have the suggestion made by Franklin that the seal of the United States should be an image of Moses and Pharaoh at the splitting of the sea, with the motto, rebellion to tyrants, obedience to God. And it's this that becomes manifest, this concept, in George Washington's letters to the Jewish community. And that's what I spoke about at BYU, how you see this incredible biblical language that appears actually in one of the less known letters that Washington wrote to the Jewish community, which I also think is the best, actually. So we could talk about that now, if you like. That's the letter to the Jews of Savannah. Which is an absolutely incredible letter.
Let's unpack that a little bit, because I think that letter in particular, I'm with you. That is, I think that is the most significant of them all. For a lot of very subtle, a lot of very subtle reasons, nuanced reasons, and I think there's a lot of instruction that we need right here in 2024 from that letter.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually largely unknown. The letter that everyone knows about, and justifiably because it's an incredible letter, is the letter by Washington to the Jews of Newport. But that was the second letter. As I described in my lecture, George Washington was sworn in April of 1789 at Federal Hall in New York City. And immediately after, the different faith communities each sort of got together. Here I'm talking especially of minority faith communities, and each wanted to reach out to Washington to wish him congratulations, but effectively to ensure their own equality in the new in the future of America. And so all the Quakers got together and sent Washington a letter. All the Baptists sent Washington a letter. All the Catholics got together and sent Washington a letter. But as I said, the Jews spread out all over America weren't that great at getting their act together and unifying to send Washington a letter. So they sent him 3 letters. You're talking like maybe 1,000 Jews in America, 3 letters. And poor Washington, who's such a gentleman, is probably wondering, why do these people keep sending me letters? What is happening here? But he's very cordial, so he responds to each one, and he knows also what they're worried about. And so each one writes to him, and when you look at a lot of the letters, you'll see celebrations of the Constitution, because the Constitution at a federal level this is addressing, intentionally or otherwise, Jonas Phillips' concerns, it bans religious tests for national office. It doesn't address state governance, but it bans religious tests for national office. So the Jews see this incredible symbol of equality in the Constitution, and so they write to Washington to celebrate that. So the first letter Washington receives is from the Jews of Savannah, Georgia, and this is June 1790. And Washington writes back to them to say, "You're right. We are giving the world an entirely different model of what equality means." Or as he put it, "I rejoice that a spirit of liberality and philanthropy is much more prevalent than it formerly was among the enlightened nations of the earth, and that your brethren will benefit thereby in proportion as it shall become still more extensive. Happily, the people of the United States of America have in many instances exhibited examples worthy of imitation." So he says, you're right. We, America, when it comes to freedom of religion and religious equality, we deserve to be imitated. Now, he could have, just ended the letter there, because he knows once the Jews get this letter, they're going to publicize it. They're going to keep this private, okay? Because, this is gold, right?
Yeah.
You receive a letter from George Washington, you got to let people know.
That's right.
So he could have he knows that everything he writes can be in the public eye. So he could have just ended it there, but he doesn't. And he adds an ending paragraph, which is absolutely unbelievable. And what he says is as follows, and I'm going to read every word except the last word just because I can't pronounce the last word. So he says, "May the same wonder-working deity who long since delivering the Hebrews from their Egyptian oppressors planted them in the promised land, whose providential agency has lately been conspicuous in establishing these United States as an independent nation, still continue to water them with the dews of heaven and to make the inhabitants of every denomination participate in the temporal and spiritual blessings of that people whose God is," and then he gives an English rendering of the Hebrew personal ineffable name of God that Jews do not pronounce. So it's really unbelievable because he's writing to them, he's saying, your story inspires our story.
Yeah.
Your story is a God who took you out of Egypt, and we see that same providential God at work in the story of the birth of America. And we hope, Washington says, that we can all share in the blessings that God has bestowed upon you. You will not find a single public address to the Jewish people from the time of the destruction of Jerusalem up till this point that is anything like this from a head of state to Jews. Nothing can compare to this. Wow. And it's being written to a very small group of Jews in Savannah, Georgia. But of course, it's part of Washington's larger thinking. Washington is trying to think about how to help create a society that has both unity and difference. And so he's very conscious of what he's doing as he's writing these letters. That's part of what he wants to do. And in that respect, we think about Washington as a leader in war and as a president that helped the Constitution get started. And of course, that's true. But as the historian Michael Meyerson points out in his book, Endowed by Our Creator, Washington is also a hero in the story of religious liberty in America. And that's what he's doing with his letters. But it's also highlighting uniquely vis-a-vis his letter to the Jewish community, the way in which the founders were inspired by the Jewish story and utilized the Hebrew Bible as a lens by which to look at the revolution and the founding.
We're going to stay with the conversation with Rabbi Meir Soloveichik. When we come back, we'll look at how we can apply these principles from Washington, his letters to the Jewish community back in the 1700s, to what we need to deal with anti-Semitism here in 2024 and beyond. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomis. KSL's top local story this hour. The Church History Museum has a new art gallery on at its building on West Temple in downtown Salt Lake. The museum showcases 200 years of artwork from members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Exhibit curator Ashley Whitaker Evans says she hopes visitors will develop an appreciation for the work members past and present have created.
I think it's something that we can be proud of, to celebrate our own cultural traditions, our own contribution to the art, to the visual arts. and hopefully encourage people to create.
The exhibit will be open through the end of February. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden again calling for an immediate ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. He's concerned a wider war could break out if Israel begins ground operations in Lebanon. Mick Mulroy is ABC's national security and defense analyst.
This might start limited, but it could easily expand to substantial. But right now, that is the way it looks like it's headed.
Israeli airstrikes have killed several top leaders of Hezbollah in the past week. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up now 17 points on the day, where it had been down for much of the day. The NASDAQ is up right now 69 points. And our KSL weather, sunshine and temperatures getting back in the 80s this week. That's next. KSL News on 231.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Autumn is in the air. Now's the time when little ghouls and boys should visit This Is the Place Heritage Park's Little Haunts. Little Haunts opens Friday and Saturdays in October, starting October 11th through the 25th. Little Haunts is a family-friendly adventure where you can dress up and experience the not-so-scary, creepy, crawly encounters. Delight in friendly witches. Ride a train. Sip cider and experience storytelling in cooler mountainside air. Changing leaves surrounded by wagons loaded with pumpkins. Your adventure wouldn't be complete without the hands-on learning and immersive experience of take-home crafts, petting live animals, a fall pony ride, combined with all your favorite Halloween trick or sweet treat traditions. For fall family adventure, hours, and Little Haunts information, visit thisistheplace.org.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
What makes you so different than the rest of us?
We ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Tell me more.
Our investment counselors focus on service over sales, prioritizing clients' needs.
How do you make money?
We don't sell any commission-based products. We have a simple management fee based on the value of our client's portfolio. So we do better when our clients do better.
What about client portfolios?
We get to know each client, their finances, family, health, lifestyle, and more, and then we tailor a portfolio based on their specific goals and needs.
Your clients really come first then, huh?
Yes, we make them a top priority. Our goal is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Wow, maybe we are different.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at fisherinvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Mark Christiansen.
That accident that was blocking the intersection, Pony Express and Redwood Road, cleared up. Traffic still backed up a little bit in all directions there, but it's moving a little bit better than it was before. No major problems on the corridor of I-15 through Utah County here in Salt Lake. It's moving at freeway speeds or above, both north and southbound. You do have a little bit of a delay if you're headed towards the 201 freeway using Bangerter northbound, just that usual slowdown right through there, and then it picks up again, and you're moving without any hindrance or problems. Murdoch Hyundai is celebrating 3 brand new dealerships with 1.99% for 5 years on the Tucson or Elantra. Murdoch Hyundai in Logan, Linden, and Murray. MurdochHyundai.com. Mark Christiansen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Much cooler today with a high of only 78. Sunny skies later this week with highs in the 80s. And right now we're at 75 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
I want to stay with this now, and I want to start applying some of these principles to some of the real hard challenges, the uncomfortable conversations that I think we have to get to in our nation today. And I think what you've laid out, Rabbi, is so important as foundational because it's principles. When we get back to those principles, we can have conversations about just about anything. And
Right.
it gives us a basis to both see it more clearly and chart a path more resolutely and more confidently, covenant confidence, to move it all forward. And so let's take a look at some of those things. Obviously, we're in a very tumultuous time in our nation and around the world. We've seen a rise in anti-Semitism on college campuses and other elite institutions around the world. What kind of conversation and what should we learn from these early exchanges between George Washington and the Jewish community that can be instructive for us in having some of these uncomfortable conversations today?
Right. So I think the correspondence between Washington and the Jews is actually incredibly relevant for our current moment. I've seen those speaking out against anti-Semitism who cite the famous lines from Washington's correspondence with the Jews of Newport, the most famous phrase of the sentence, which is actually written originally by the Jewish leader of Newport who wrote to Washington. Washington was just echoing these words. But Washington described America as a government which gives to bigotry no sanction, persecution no assistance. And so you will see those that cite those words in speaking out against anti-Semitism. And that, of course, is appropriate because bigotry of any kind is un-American toward any group. But I think there's a larger and deeper point that we have to understand here. And it's Washington's letter to the Jews of Savannah that allows us to understand it. In those circles, the anti-Semitism, the anti-Israel hatred that we see manifest in certain parts of the academy, that hatred actually goes hand in hand with anti-Americanism, Boyd. And so when you will see rallies celebrating enmity toward Israel, when you see anti-Semitic rallies, very often the American flag will be desecrated at these rallies as well. And the reason for that is, I think, because these people engaging in hateful action, what they also hate is the way in which America has seen itself as exceptional and covenantal. And they hate that too. And they understand deep down the way in which the biblical Jewish story has inspired America's understanding of itself as a covenantal nation. And they understand deep down the way in which the miraculous story of modern Israel has further inspired so many Americans in the way they see God's providence at work in the world and how that impacts their own understanding of covenantal identity. And so this needs to be seen not just as a danger to Jews in America. It needs to be seen as a danger to America. In an article about this, and I also said this at BYU, I cited one of my favorite stories from one of my favorite biographies, which is David McCullough's biography of Harry Truman. And Truman was vice president, not really told anything about what was going on. And he's rushed from the Capitol to the White House into a room where Eleanor Roosevelt is waiting for him. And Eleanor Roosevelt says to Truman, "Harry, the president is dead." And Truman was really a very nice person in these situations, right? It's not even thinking about what this, doesn't seem to be thinking about what that means for him. He just says to Eleanor Roosevelt, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And she says to him, "Is there anything we can do for you? For you are the one who's in trouble now." So I cited the story, and I said that since October 7th, I've received many wonderful messages from faith leaders in America and friends evincing concern for the Jewish community. And what these messages have largely been in substance are, is there anything we can do for you? And that's very, very much appreciated. But the larger message I want to make is that actually what the phenomenon of anti-Semitism made manifest in elite areas of American life, what that actually means is that we, all of us as Americans, are in trouble now. Because what's at danger is what's being targeted is the covenantal identity of America. So it's important to cite not just letters from the founding fathers about bigotry being bad, though of course bigotry is bad and un-American, and it's important to emphasize that. There's something deeper happening here. And I think all of us as Americans, Jewish or non-Jewish, have to understand what this threat to our country actually is.
Yeah. And to me, it gets to that whole essence of one, you have to make friends before you need friends, and the day the journey begins is not the day the journey begins, and those journeys usually begin by those covenant relationships, by that interconnectedness that we find in this country that leads us away from just the politics of it and even the policy of it, but it gets back to the principles and the people. That's where this great experiment began, and that's where we have to stay grounded, because if we don't put that first, there's no way that we can create a society that's really going to last.
Exactly right. I cited from Rabbi Sachs, one of my favorite comments from him, because I often find, as with Tocqueville, you appreciate the uniqueness of America more when you see yourself as an American through the eyes of an outsider. So Rabbi Sachs has this wonderful story about him visiting the United States, I think for the first time as a student, I believe a college student, and he visits Washington, D.C. And what strikes him when he visits memorials is that they feature not only statues, but also words, the ideas affiliated with these leaders, these individuals. You see Lincoln, famous statue, of course, but you also see Gettysburg Address, Second Inaugural. Jefferson will have Declaration of Independence, Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. And then, as Sachs said, in London, the memorial for David Lloyd George has 3 words on it: David, Lloyd, and George. And the statue of Churchill has just Churchill, even though, as I think Robert Sachs notes, words were kind of important to Churchill.
He said a few things.
Once or twice he may have given a speech. He was a reluctant speaker, but if you really pressured him, he was willing to give a talk. So his point is that the way he put it was Britain at least was a tradition-based society.
Yeah.
Those who belonged, they knew what it was. They don't, and if you don't know, if you didn't know, that showed you didn't belong.
Right.
But that's, I think, how Rabbi Sachs put it. But America, and these are really Rabbi Sachs' words, I'm just paraphrasing, America is that rarest of examples of covenant society. Yeah. And so these words are ideas that bind us all together.
Yeah.
That's what it means to be part of the covenantal society that is America.
Yeah.
But it's just this notion that America, of course, to assert that America is a covenantal society and that it's therefore exceptional is not, of course, to assert that it's a perfect country. No one would ever say that.
For sure.
Or that its history is. No one would say that its history is not without sin.
Yeah.
That is, of course, not what's being asserted. But there are those that hate the very notion of America seeing itself as covenantal and therefore called and therefore exceptional.
Yeah.
And that goes hand in hand with the hatred of Jews and hatred of the Jewish state that is being manifested in some spheres of American life today.
And that's such an important part of that whole process. And we were very fortunate on this show. We one of the very last interviews that Rabbi Sachs gave before his very untimely passing was on our show. And we go back to that regularly. It's an inspiration point for me. And we actually spoke last week of this very idea of tradition versus covenant. You and I must be on the same study schedule with the Sachs Foundation. But we love that. And we do understand and recognize that in this country that we have not always lived up to the principles we profess to believe, but yet it's even in our brokenness that we come together back around the principles because they are the ties that bind us and give us that path forward.
And the path forward has been in the name of those principles.
Yes.
That's what's shown the way forward.
Yeah. Well, give us one last thought, Rabbi, before we let you go today. This has been so delightful. But we always like to get to the therefore what component of things. And what's the one thing that you would hope that all of us today, one thing that we can think different or one thing we can do different based on these principles?
Well, I think all of us need to think about, as parents and as members of families, how we teach about what America is and the uniqueness of the country. And as for me, myself, I think I would just like to add, especially since as we begin to mark the High Holy Days, we look retrospectively and prospectively. This has been a very difficult year for the Jewish people, obviously. But the very fact that I'm on your show, boy, talking about this highlights the uniqueness of America. And it's something I said to the students. One of the students asked me at BYU, given this was somebody who was clearly, I think, in some ways stirred by what I had said about anti-Semitism in America. And I said, I think it was a young woman, and she asked, like, what can we do just as students? And I tried to impress on the students that she and really none of the students should underestimate the power that just concern for others, as fellow Americans, the power that impact can make. So look, as a Jew and as an American, I think it's quite remarkable in Jewish history. We've never, if you look at the sweep of Jewish history, it wasn't that common that there were multitudes of non-Jews that actually care about us and were worried about our future. That's not really part and parcel of much of Jewish history. And that makes this experience I'm describing, different and extraordinary. And the fact that someone is concerned for someone else, and that if someone who is not Jewish wants to actually make her concerns known or his concerns known to fellow Americans that are Jews, or in one's own sphere of public life, they shouldn't underestimate the profound power of the impression that will make on their fellow Americans. And that's what I sought to impress upon the students as I met with them last week.
Fantastic. Wonderful insight, inspiration as always. Rabbi Meir Soloveichik, so grateful to have some time with you today. Grateful for you to taking us to the mountain, that commanding heights of moral imagination. I think we've all explored that and thought some things a little bit different today. Thank you so much for making time and for continuing to be a moral voice and a voice for the covenant component that is unique to this place we call America. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, boy. The privilege is mine.
Great conversation there with Rabbi Meir Soloveichik, and we'll take one last break. We'll come back with some final thoughts here on Inside Sources as we wrap it up on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
The Management Minute is a service of the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. A few years back, I had the privilege of being invited to High Table at one of the colleges at Oxford University in England. High Table is like the banquet you see in the movies, minus the ghosts floating overhead. Yes, this professor from Utah State University got to march into a hall as robed students stood in respect, then sat at a high table in front of distinguished scholars. It's not hard to be in awe. As we sat, the robed headmaster said, "It doesn't matter who you sit next to, everyone at this table is interesting." Everyone was interesting, but not more so than my brilliant colleagues at the Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. Universities are places of light and knowledge that change us. If you're ready for that change, try an MBA at Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
Do you know the secret to losing up to 1 pound of fat every day? At slcfatloss.com, we know the secret. Our unique weight loss program makes it easy to lose weight, get healthy, and get your energy back naturally, safely, and effectively. If you'd like to lose unhealthy fat without counting points, no exercising, no prepackaged meals, no surgery, and no injections with the risk of serious side effects, go to slcfatloss.com now to schedule your free consultation in person or virtually.
When I joined Salt Lake City Fat Loss, I was looking for big results, and I got them. 57 pounds in 60 days, and those huge results kept me motivated. So if you're interested, make sure you reach out to Salt Lake City Fat Loss and learn more at slcfatloss.com.
Many clients lose 20 to 30 pounds in about a month or two. That's up to a pound per day. For your free private weight loss consultation, call 801-450-1882 or go to slcfatloss.com. That's slcfatloss.com. Results may vary.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. In October of 1985, a woman named Cherie Warren left work at a busy Salt Lake City office
to meet her estranged husband at a downtown auto dealership.
She never made it home. Cherie's car surfaced weeks later in Las Vegas.
In the parking lot of a hotel casino.
No one knows how it got there.
Strange. It was strange.
Both Cherie's estranged husband and her boyfriend raised suspicion for investigators.
I kind of thought that he might have done something.
But no arrests were ever made. In Cold Season 3, we dig into double lives, make new connections in the case, and examine the difficulty raised by reasonable doubt.
We want answers just as much as anyone else.
They have creeps like that now too, so nothing's changed.
That's the new Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie. Now available anywhere you get your podcasts.
Whenever I talk about Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, it is so easy to simply focus on the steaks. After all, it's in the name. But Ruth's Chris Steakhouse is also famous for their other dishes as well. Other entrees like seafood and poultry. I love it too. At certain times of the year, they'll have specialty dishes, and they will be prepared to perfection. And then those side dishes that are just legendary. When Dee and I eat at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, this is what we almost always do. We love the asparagus and we love the potatoes au gratin. And don't forget to leave room for those desserts. They are just off the charts. We're so fortunate, and especially at this time of year, driving up the canyon to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. We have 2 locations, one in Hotel Park City, and then with all the great events happening in downtown Salt Lake City, they're at 275 Southwest Temple. Your dining experience is waiting at Ruth's Chris.
When it comes to our homes, stains in your carpet can be really frustrating. It can be easy to think you need harsh chemicals or detergents to get them out, but these always leave behind soapy residue, which ends up attracting more dirt to the area. That's why you should trust Zero-Res to get out tough stains and regularly clean your surfaces. Zero-Res uses ZR water to deeply clean carpets without any icky residue. Right now, mention KSL and get 3 rooms of carpet cleaning for just $109. Plus 20% off air duct cleaning. Book now at zerores.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a new exhibit at the Church History Museum downtown showcases 200 years of art created by Latter-day Saints. Second, President Biden calling again for a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Third, dozens of firefighters from Utah on their way to Georgia to help in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. 77 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program, if you happen to miss anything along the way, especially the last 45 minutes of the show, we started at the top of the 2 o'clock hour with my conversation with Rabbi Meir Soloveichik, and just a wide-ranging, important conversation that covered so many things. But we started from this basis of a series of letters from the Jewish community to George Washington and his ultimate response back to these communities and the principles that it contained. And as is so often the case, the solutions to what worried people in the early stages of this nation were the same as they are today. And the solutions are principles and getting back to those core things. And so we had a great conversation. If you missed any of the conversation with Rabbi Soloveichik, you just want to go to kslpodcast.com later on this afternoon. We'll have that posted. You can listen to the entire interview. We did 3 full segments of the show with Rabbi Soloveichik today. And so many things to think about, so many things to think again about. And a great way to do that is just to go back into the podcast. But I want to get to this one component that sort of was a thread throughout our 2 hours here on Inside Sources today, and that's the issue of leadership, because it always comes down to that. And it doesn't matter what it is. I have talked many times about this idea that when people say, well, it's a funding problem, whether that's someone who needs to raise money for education, for a building, or for an endowment, or maybe it's a nonprofit, when people say it's a funding problem, my answer is always, no, it's not a funding problem. It's a leadership problem. And when we talk about what's going on in the country or not going on in the country, it's usually a leadership problem. Someone has not gone up and planted the flag and said, here's where we're going, jump on board, or tell me why we should plant the flag somewhere else. So we had a series of conversations throughout the show today that highlighted why this is so important. One of the conversations we had was with Ari Hawkins from Politico. And he wrote a beautiful piece talking about what's going on in terms of the supply chain and why we still have so many problems with that and why there's so much instability and uncertainty around that. And it has a lot of people worried because if things go sideways again, as we saw during the pandemic, we're not ready. We're not ready to make those changes. And Ari pointed out the fact that we've missed some opportunities for change because nobody knows who's in charge and nobody's planted the flag. Ari pointed out to us that nobody knows where to go, that you have all these different agencies that have all kinds of different objectives for themselves, but the administration has not identified or designated a clear point person. So there's no leader and there's no unifying objective. Those are two critical things for the success of any organization, especially in government. And so one of the things that the business community continues to complain about to the administration as it relates to the supply chain problems and the red tape and some of the breakdowns is that there is no point person. There is not a leader that when something goes sideways or someone says, hey, this is what we've got to change, you can say, oh, this is who you need to talk to. This is who's in charge. This is who's leading this thing. And when you don't have that, when everybody's a leader, nobody's a leader. You have to have someone who's going to plant the flag and then call everybody to the objective, whatever that objective may be. And we're missing that. So Ari was pointing out that when it comes to dealing with the supply chain, we're pretty vulnerable. And it's one of those things that most of us don't think about on most days. It's one of those things that is not a problem until it's absolutely a problem. And right now we know there's a potential dock workers strike looming today. Could happen as early as tonight. And if that happens, we're going to have a wide range of shortages and delays on everything from goods to automobiles, bananas, Christmas decorations, and on and on and on it goes. But when there's no leadership, we play this political football game. And everybody kind of punts it around and who's in charge, and you can point fingers and shrug your shoulders and say, not my job, I'm not tasked with it, you'll have to talk to somebody else, and nothing changes and nothing gets done. The same thing is true when it comes to foreign policy. If we haven't planted our flag in the ground, say this is who we are, this is what we stand for, here's how we're going to deal with our allies, here's how we're going to do with our alliances, here's what we're going to do with our enemies. You gotta stake it. You have to put something in the ground and say this is where we're going to start from. We've seen this in the United States Senate. We talked to Brian Darling earlier today and went through the fact that the Senate is broken right now. Why? Because leaders of both parties have taken the Senate far afield from what it used to be as a great deliberative body, and now it's a political body. So we have discussions about getting rid of the filibuster, just making it a majority rule, making it, in essence, the House of Representatives. We talked about the need for each individual senator to have the opportunity to offer amendments to bills. And you may think that's just Civics 101 and your schoolhouse rock. Currently, it rarely happens because the leaders of both parties fill up a bill, or what's called the amendment tree. They fill it all up with just fillers. That's all they are. They're placeholders, they're fillers, but it prevents and blocks any senator from either party from offering any amendment that would make the bill better. And that's part of the collusion and the brokenness, and it's a problem of leadership. And then, of course, our conversation this hour with Rabbi Meir Soloveichik and how leadership is the essence of what we have to get to, that it's coming together in that way that helps us get to that covenant of principles in this country that formed the nation, that founded it, that strengthened it, and is the key to the future of it. But we all have to get on board, and we need to recognize what those principles are about and what our part is to uphold those values and those principles. Well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, as you go out into the world, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. We're at 75 degrees. KSL's top story. The same Utah task force that responded to the 9/11 attacks is mobilized once again, this time assisting victims of Hurricane Helene. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera joins us live with details. Eric?
Jeff, it's called Utah